Sweet. All right, we good? Welcome to the first meeting of the Rules Reform and Legislative Modernization Committee. It is 6:32 p.m. on 3/1/2022. And I welcome you all to our first meeting together. And in our... Yes, please.
You ever had the vibration?
I'll give shitting, really? I have worked so hard with the vibration, so hard. All right.
That's good.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna have to be. All right, sorry about the vibration, people. Paid a lot of money for this video camera. Anyway, like to take attendance. Mr. Kuhn.
Here.
Matt Miller.
Present.
Bill Ricard.
Present, Madam Chair.
Jeff Purley. You were here a minute ago.
He's here.
He's here. Thank you.
Yep.
Andrew Joyce.
I'm here.
Thank you. Wanda Willingham.
Present.
Mark Grimm.
Here.
Joe O'Brien.
Present.
I'd like to welcome others. I see Dustin Reedy and Mickey Cleary and Paul Bergdorf and Arne Zilny, Bill Reinhardt. I think that's it. Oh, Frank Moriello, how you doing? Welcome to everyone. There's basically three things I'd like to talk about tonight, if you're up to it. And one is about the open meetings law and whether we'd like to write a letter to the governor. The other thing is how we might approach a rules review over the next bit of time. And the other thing is Granicus and further modernization ideas that you might have. If that's okay with you all, then we will do that. All right. So for those of you who have been with us through this whole Granicus, you know that we've been quite comfortable doing the online with its pluses and minuses. Like, I think it's very hard not to look you in the eye, but I also appreciate that more people attend. And so according to the Public Officers Law, Section 103C, which requires that the public has to have in-person access to every site where a member of the public is participating in a remote meeting. And that's what's stopped us from being able to continue remote meetings without a change to the law. So you might remember in the beginning of COVID, we drafted as a legislature a letter to the governor, which basically talked about the benefits of of being able to meet remotely as we have been. Which we cited as the participation of level of the public, attending meetings rose, being able to come to meetings. The participation of the level of legislators also rose, which so we are seen and viewed and more accessible to everyone, and we're more inclusive because we are more accessible to everyone. We have a greater diversity of speakers. We've even had some people from way out of town that were able to address us when it is appropriate. You know, we've had the viewing of committee meetings has increased pretty, I don't have a statistic, but it's been a pretty strong increase. Really, really big. Environmental benefits, we also cited in the letter, which, you know, having 39 of us plus staff drive sometimes a great distance for a very short meeting is not always, you know, beneficial for the environment or us, and can be viewed as wasteful and unnecessary. So what we had asked the governor the last time to do was to amend or change that meeting law so that the requirement about the public access for every person. So if I'm having a remote meeting, I don't have to have my house open to the public. And so as long as we had one properly noticed public location, or 2 or 3 or 5. So I'd like to hear, what do you think about that? Do you think 1 is adequate? Do you think what we should continue? We should ask for the same thing again, or did you want to ask for some more kinds of things? I think we did survey you guys at the beginning of COVID, and you all were very interested in keeping the hybrid meetings because they are more convenient. So what do you think about that? I see Andrew has his hand up. Mr. Chair.
My hand is up.
First, Lynn, I wanted to thank you for your willingness and your hard work to take over this effort. You identified you early on as a perfect person to assist us as we kind of move along here. A lot of things got put to the wayside through the pandemic in a lot of different ways. But I think there's an expectation now, especially with the Granicus piece and picking back up where we left off with electronic voting and our rules reform responsibilities and the opportunities there. I want to thank you and Mr. Kuhn for leading this effort, and Wanda as well for her work here going in. I think in terms of your question on the letter, it seems like there's a theme from state government now where there is some willingness to let local governments kind of decide what's best for them. So I think this is a good first step that we're taking tonight, is kind of talking about what works well, what has worked best for the Albany County Legislature, and just thinking that a hybrid option in terms of in discussion with leadership. Linda, I'm sure you're familiar with this as well. I think there's a willingness, at least for committee meetings and public hearings, to have an option to go hybrid. But for full legislative meetings, there's an expectation that we do show up and we look each other in the eye, as you had said. But I think we should go for home rule advantage, home rule kind of option. We're doing the planning now, and I think we should ask the state legislature to let Albany County decide in terms of our rules and our own control over what we do, what works best for us. And I think a hybrid option for committee meetings and public hearings and legislative meetings, where applicable, for our rules, would work best for us.
All righty, got Mark, then Matt.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I think anytime you make it communication more convenient, you're going to get more of it. I think just by the nature of it. And that's one of the things we do as legislators, are hoping to have greater interaction with the public and among ourselves. So I think the hybrid thing is really an advance in the way we communicate with our constituencies. And there's just so many benefits to it. The committee meetings now, a member can participate in all the committee meetings, which is really not realistic otherwise. And they can even have a say and a perspective. So it strengthens the committee meetings. And I also think it strengthens the ledge meetings too, because more people can participate. More people are likely to speak out if they can do it from home, rather than come down to Albany. And a lot of you folks, you live in Albany, you work in Albany, but a lot of the county doesn't. So it's a significant inconvenience to come down to Albany at night and to do whatever they want to do, speak out. So I just think hybrid is an advance, and people are more comfortable with Zoom meetings now. In the beginning, it was very clunky because they really didn't know what they were doing. But I think the world has become much more comfortable with Zoom. And I think this is a significant advance in the way we conduct our political affairs. And I think hybrid, we really should stay with the hybrid model, allowing people to participate and members to participate by Zoom, particularly for public hearings where we have no role. We really aren't, we can't even ask questions. It's in the rules that everybody gets to speak. And it's much easier, of course, to speak from home than it is to come down to Albany. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Matt.
Well, I think these guys both said what I was already headed to. They just beat me to it. Except that maybe slight difference is that, I'm very much in favor of the committee meetings being hybrid for all the reasons that were already, no need to be superfluous here. But I think the regular monthly ledge meetings, for legislators should be in person. I think adding a hybrid version for the people coming in, doing the speaking so we can get more speakers would be great. But I'm definitely for us being in person on our monthly meeting. And if we want to let the public in hybrid version wise, then that's great.
Okay, so I'm hearing committee meetings hybrid, monthly meetings in person, possibly the public hybrid, if they want to choose that, and we can make that happen technologically. Can we get a straw poll of your hands if you think that would be amenable?
Well, Linda, is the public hearing, that's something different than our legislative meeting.
Right.
Public hearing is different. I definitely think that should be online because there's no reason for members to come in.
Right. But what about that 20 minutes or 15 before our meeting?
That's
No,
what
I
was
mean
talking-
the public hearings where oftentimes there's nothing on the agenda, nobody speaks. I mean, that's kind of crazy to come into a public hearing when nobody's speaking. But
I agree
think
with you,
that-
Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, I agree with you. I was talking about the 20 minutes, like, the before our regular meeting.
Yeah,
That part.
yeah. No, I think the public should always have a chance to speak from home if that's what they choose. Now, if you want to bring the members in for a ledge meeting, I can appreciate that. But I just feel like the easier we make it for the better. But I always thought the public hearing is kind of silly with not having a at-home option for everybody, because oftentimes, of course, we don't even have speakers, which is really kind of crazy.
All right, there's Bill Ricard, then Paul Bergdorf, then Bill Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, when I first started hearing about this, I'll be honest with you, I was a little concerned that I thought we should be in person all the time for all committee meetings. However, as this, situation developed unfortunately with COVID and everything for the last 2 years, obviously, my position has changed, and I think it definitely has some benefits. More people are involved, not only us as legislators, but obviously constituents. I think it's great. A lot more people in attendance, people can see it. That's awesome. But Lynn, can you go into a little more depth, what you mean by a hybrid model? I guess I don't want to get into a situation where individuals or legislators just don't show up for whatever reason to a meeting and they just want to go on a Zoom call as opposed to showing up. So can you give me a little more specifically what you mean by that?
What I mean is that you would have the option when hybrid. So some people might choose to come. I imagine that staff would be present running the meeting like they are. I believe you're, Pat, in the office, are you not? Maybe not today, but ordinarily during a ledge meeting, somebody would be in the office. And so maybe that would be the public place that a public person would be allowed to go to. And then if you lived nearby and wanted to come and the weather was good and you were feeling up to it, you would drive down to that meeting. Or if you had something to argue that you wanted to argue in person. But if you wouldn't or couldn't, you could take the meeting by Zoom. So we'd have to figure out the technology in order to enable that. So the people in the room would see you. They do that at the assembly, I understand. They have the faces up on the screen and the people can interact with them. And it's another something to get used to, but it would be a way that we wouldn't have to all drive in all the time, especially for a short, sometimes we have those 4-minute meetings. That's what I mean by hybrid. And I'll leave it at that for now. And you have,
I mean, will that be specifically delineated in a piece of legislation exactly what the rules and regulations are?
I imagine since they are now that it would be, I think it would be having to do with the open part, which part would the public, it's all about the public and being open to the public. So as long as we accommodate the public according to the rules, I think that's what we're trying to argue for, that it doesn't really matter how many people are watching or participating as long as we accommodate the public legally and so everybody has equal access. That's the way I understand it.
Lynn, if I could jump in as
All right.
well.
Although
I think what Lynn is talking about now also is merely writing a letter to the governor or up the hill essentially to advocate for these changes. Obviously, we will be bound by whatever state changes there are in the law, as we are currently bound by what the law is, which requires open meetings in all circumstances for legislative meetings and committee meetings and whatnot. So this would be simply advocating for some change. You could advocate for more or less, as much as the legislature would like that. But we couldn't personally, or as a legislature, you could not make these changes without something changing up on the Hill.
right. So I got Paul, Bill, Wanda, and Andrew.
First of all, I agree completely with Andrew and Mark and Bill. I like the idea of quote unquote hybrid committee meetings. I like the idea of us being together for our monthly meeting. I'm not sure. I think there would be an amazing amount of details for staff to work out for a hybrid meeting, because I'm not sure. There are a couple of different ways that we go on record and we record our meetings. You know, we're all used to going to a committee meeting where someone's there with a camera and then they upload it the next day or whatever. I would not want to lose any transparency. What's really nice about the Zoom meetings is that anyone from the public can either go to, if they want to, you know, I think they can check in and not participate, or they can go to YouTube. But I'd like to make sure that we have the transparency on both sides at committee meetings. But I personally have enjoyed the opportunity to attend more committee meetings than I am assigned to, by virtue of being able to log on and to listen. And then after the committee members have spoken, if I have a question or a comment, being able to offer it. And I think that is much more inclusive for the legislative body, as well as being transparent. So that's my take. Thank you very much.
Am I up next, Lynn? Should I just start? Okay, what I wanted to do is two things. One is I want to sort of make sure we have the terminology right. And then second, I'll express my thoughts about which way I would like it. It seems to me we actually have three options. One is everything is on Zoom, or an event is on Zoom. The second would be fully live, where you have to be present. And third then is what is being called the hybrid, where we're doing both. Now, personally, my preference would be that the committee meetings be continued just as they are now, as we may do in the Democratic caucus. We have been doing, and we've thought about continuing it that way. I like the idea of getting, well, for all the reasons people have already said. So my preference would be committee meetings would continue the way they are. My second choice would be that hybrid option, but I really like the idea of having everything on Zoom so that we're using the technology and we're all in the same format and platform. For the meetings of the full legislature, I would kind of like a hybrid model where people, if they want to go live, they can, but if there's whatever circumstances that a member can't be there in person, they would still be able to at least observe, hopefully participate through that hybrid option. Because I could envision that could affect some of us where, you know, you might have intended to want to go live, but something comes up at work and you can't do it. So this way you'd still be able to participate. As far as the public hearings go, I think that what I would call the Zoom option has all the benefits of being able to hear everyone. You know, as Mark said, we can't ask questions anyway. So I think we should try to just maximize public input, and that should be the sort of the key point that we take on that position, on those events. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
It appears as if we've lost Lynn. Is that the case?
I believe
Coming
she's
back
back.
in?
For audio.
Oh, I'm back now. I want to hear from Wanda.
Oh, okay. Is it my turn? Did you hear Bill?
I did hear Bill. I didn't hear all of Paul, but I'll make it up. I'll watch it later. That 2 minutes was long 2 minutes.
Okay. Bill Reinhardt did bring out a couple of things I had questions on. So Zoom, live, and hybrid. So now I just want to clarify one thing. For when are we offering hybrid? That's what I want to clarify. In other words, I'm understanding that hybrid means that there's a Zoom meeting going on and also in person, meaning, you know, if, in other words, let's say our monthly meeting is live, but we're also offering members the opportunity to Zoom in? That's a question. That's a question.
That is what I was meaning by hybrid, but I'm not certain if that's what everybody meant. But I was thinking also that if there's a medical reason you can't make it in, but you still want to participate in addition to just something coming up at work, or, you know, there might be reasons we might choose to not come to a meeting. But anyway, that's what I meant. But it sounds like so far the group has been talking about legislative meeting in person for us, and possibly the public could pop in via Zoom before we begin. Sounded like that kind of hybrid. Then we were talking about committee meetings. It sounded like people were open to having a hybrid function, which maybe some of us might choose to go there, but some of us might choose to also join by Zoom. We'd have to figure that out technologically. And that leaves any special meetings and any, I think that's it, right? Committee meetings, right? Big meetings. The public hearing we thought should be, it sounds like the feel of the group is that hybrid would work best, and we might continue to have a higher public participation. Now,
Does
that will all work with the law when the law comes.
So now, Lynn, does that mean Zoom is offered for any type of meeting that we have? Is that what I'm hearing?
It sounds like at the beginning of the legislative meeting, it would be possible for people to Zoom in, and then it would be live after that. And then, yes, that's what it sounds like, that a hybrid, to me, a hybrid is when you use a little gas sometimes and you use a little of the battery some of the time. So if in person is battery and the other is gas, we're doing a little bit of both. And how we will do it will depend on our needs if we get permission to do it.
So does attendance become an issue? Or will it become an issue, or how is attendance going to be kept the same way in regards to when everything is printed and is put online? Will it denote whether we attended in person or by Zoom?
That's a good question, I suppose. It could be either, you know, way, but we could probably, unless the law tells us how to take attendance, we could Andrew was suggesting that we make our own suggestions about how we would like it to be done. I mean, to me, right now, you're still present. I mean, you're not in my room here with me, but I see you, you know, so to me that counts, but to somebody else might argue that it's not quite exactly the same. I don't know legal footing. So we got now, Andrew.
Yes, thank you. Just to kind of reiterate what Rebecca had stated, we started the conversation. I think what we're trying to kind of hover around now is what we want to lobby the state government for, the state legislature and the governor, when it comes time to, you know, roll back or amend what we're allowed to do now remotely in terms of open meetings. And you know, once we brainstorm, we get a good solid, you know, consensus on what we think our plan should be going forward. You know, we'll do a letter like we did before, and with the hope that they'll let local governments decide what's best for them. But I think what we're hearing tonight and what we've heard over the past 2 years, there should 100% be an option for the public to remotely participate in our meetings, regardless of what we're doing. But for the legislature, you know, for committee meetings and public hearings where we traditionally don't get much participation, should there be a remote option / hybrid option for members as well? You know, that should be there. But I think that's something 100% that we should be lobbying for, is transparency and that option for the public to come in remotely, regardless of what we're doing. It's not going to be easy given the technological challenges, but that's going to, you know, be a part of what we're talking about, you know, over the next couple of weeks and months. You know, with Granicus and, you know, whatever we're allowed to do in terms of open meetings going forward. And, you know, I think we'll have to talk about, you know, how we approach this, you know, operationally during the week with staff. Will there need to be an additional functionality there with the county's IT department in terms of how we move forward, because we have a whole committee behind this, we have staff behind this, and whatever we're allowed to do once there's a decision made statewide, through the state legislature on open meetings and how we do those, that's going to inform how we change our rules and how we amend our rules. Again, part of the work that we're doing here. So I think in terms of the letter, we're going to be advocating for never before seen options for public to be participating in our process, both in person and remote, and for committee meetings and public hearings, a remote / hybrid option for members as well. But it's kind of what I'm hearing. But this is our planning process as the state legislature approaches a date, to amend or roll back what is in place right now in terms of what we can do. So I think I had that.
Hey, Wanda, were you done?
Oh, yes.
All right. I think, oh, now we got more. So is it Joe O'Brien, Bill Reinhardt, Mickey Cleary, and Paul again? Let's do it that way. I was away. Go ahead, Joe, you're muted.
I'm not against the hybrid, but I think for the legislature, we do need to meet in person for the committees and for regular meetings. Public, yes, of course, we try to encourage the public to participate in our public hearings. And that's my feeling. Are we going to do like a TV a large TV in our chamber so that during public hearings people can, or a comment period, people can see them when they're talking? Those are some of the logistics I think has to be worked out.
Right. That is correct. Anything else?
My turn?
Yes.
Lynn? Okay. I guess I want to try to be a little more clear about something. My preference, and I'll do it by example, my preference for the committee meetings would be that we continue to do it through Zoom, exactly as we're doing now, and that we not drive downtown for a committee meeting. Lynn, you gave an example of hybrid, which wasn't really what I had in mind when you said we might have a public meeting component of or the public hearing before the meeting of the legislature, where the public hearing part would be on Zoom or hybrid, where you could be both present or Zoom in. But then the hearing, or then the meeting itself of the full legislature would be live. In my mind, that's not what hybrid means. What hybrid means is a specific event, such as the meeting of the legislature or the meeting of a committee, would have two options for attendance. One would be online, one would be present. To me, that's what hybrid means. Anyway, my thought is that my preference would be that committee meetings could in fact continue as they are right now, where we would do everything on Zoom. We would not be driving downtown for that short committee meeting. Likewise, for the public hearings, on those days where it's just a public hearing after a committee meeting, we could do everything on Zoom, so nobody would be getting in their car and driving anywhere. We'd have more attendance, et cetera, et cetera. For the meeting of the legislature, we might need to be hybrid because, as Joe and others have said, there's a desire for us to be face-to-face, but still having the public participation and the participation of a member who, for whatever reason, may not be able to attend live. So that would be a hybrid meeting of the full legislature. Now, as far as the letter goes, I think I would prefer that we send a letter that basically is open-ended enough so that we are, advocating for that home rule, advocating for flexibility, but that different local legislatures might decide to do things a little differently. Like some of us might decide we can do something totally on Zoom. Others might say, no, we want to do a hybrid model. but that our letter would be advocating for both options for the locals to decide, what works best for them. If I'm making sense there. So the letter, which is what we're really talking about right now, would try to maximize the potential for the local jurisdictions to use Zoom, either entirely or in a hybrid model, to replace kind of the current law.
Thank you. I think it's Mickey, Paul, and Mark, and then we'll see where we are and see.
I think the letter, if we're talking about the letter, should give us the most flexibility as we can, which means give us the option to do Zoom or not do Zoom. That's what the letter should be. I definitely think we should, be able to do Zoom for everything. For the committee meetings, it's great. I guess I've only been in 3 meetings in the chamber, so I don't really know how that goes, except when I used to work for the majority counsel's office. But I think the letter should give us the flexibility to do what we want, and then we can decide after that. That's my opinion.
All right, I got Paul quick and then Mark and Bill. Is your back up?
Yes, I wasn't gonna restate where I stood, but I like the idea of Zoom for committee meetings. I like the idea of members being present in the chamber. Because oftentimes, well, not so often, but from time to time, we get really controversial bills. And I think it's good for the members to see 75, 100 people come out to take a position on those bills. And I don't think you get that when you're on Zoom. So I really think that unless you have some very limited exceptions for participation by Zoom for the meetings, they should be in person. The last thing I wanted to ask was sort of a question and a statement. We're operating now, I talked to Lenny earlier today, we're still operating under a governor's emergency decree. Is that, our Pat, Rebecca, Arnis, is that accurate? We're still doing Zoom under an emergency decree?
Yeah, we can do it
yes.
until the 16th of March, right?
Right. I would just note, and this is me slicing hairs, the state legislature amended the public officers law to the point where it is tied to the emergency decree. So, and then it will, as I understand it, result back to how it was before COVID.
Okay, so are you telling me that our authority to meet via Zoom ends on March 16th?
I can't
Or
say whether or
when
not
Governor Hochul says it ends.
it ends at the exhaustion of the emergency declaration. When Governor Cuomo, he was operating under essentially executive powers pretty much solely, whereas Governor Hochul has the legislature adopting these amendments. It ended when he ended it. He did give us a heads up. I don't know what Governor Hochul is going to do. I know we're 15 days away or thereabouts.
Well, that was really my question, which is, I would hate to find out on the 14th that on the 6th, 17th, everything has to be in person. So to the extent that we can communicate that to the Association of Counties or whoever our lobbying entities are, it would be nice to have, or to our legislative delegation. I think it would be very valuable to know which direction we were going in with more than 48 or 72 hours notice.
Sure would.
There's a
So that's
memo. There's a memo on the Committee on Open Government website that speaks directly to this. It's only 2 paragraphs long, and it says basically, if you go to the Committee on Open Government website, it's the first thing on there, and it basically says that we can have remote meetings as long as this disaster declaration is in place. And while it keeps getting extended, the current version of it expires on March 16th, 2022. And it's the governor has the change in the open meetings law basically gives the governor the authority to extend our ability to have remote meetings. But when that expires, when the governor says, hey, there's no longer a state disaster emergency, we go back to the status quo, which means we can't have remote meetings. So either we need to have an extension of the state disaster, which at this point, I think is probably not going to happen, or there needs to be a change to the open meetings law to allow us to have. But if neither of those things happen before March 16th, I think everyone should realize any meeting after March 16th has to be in person. We can't do this anymore.
That was the answer to my question.
All right, I think there's Mark left.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, the Opens Meeting Law was written long before the internet. It had no idea what the internet was. And there's this undercurrent that somehow Zoom or technology makes things less open. That's ridiculous. It's not an open meeting when the only people who can participate are the people that show up in our chamber that night. That's not open. Open is embracing technology so we can open up this process of political governance to everyone from their home. That's the ultimate. Bill Reinhardt said it best. The Zoom meeting for public hearings and committees should say exactly as they are. It's not going to require any additional technological knowledge for us. They are open. The public hearings, people can speak from home. That's open, but it also allows us. I don't know why any committee person would want to come into a committee meeting when they could do it just by Zoom. I don't get that. So I'm for Zoom across the board, but there is some folks who, for some reason, want our bodies in the legislature for county meetings. I can appreciate that, but there still should be an opportunity. That would be the one hybrid case where you have in person and people could speak from online from home during the public forum preceding the meeting. But I see no reason why to change the public hearings or the committees meetings, because it's worked really well. And it's understanding that we live in the year 2022 and the internet was created well after the open meetings law. This notion that for some reason, if we're not there in person, we're less open is baloney. We want to give access to this political governance to as many people as possible. And that's what technology does. So the letter should say, hey, let every county decide for themselves what's best. Do we really want to impose on Schoharie County an in-person thing? They're a rural county. There's rural counties across the state. Are you saying they shouldn't judge whether or not they can go Zoom or not? So this Zoom technology is a fantastic thing, especially now that people have a greater understanding of how to work it and use it. This is one of the biggest breakthroughs in political communication that's ever been invented, and we should take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Wanda, is your hand still up? All right, well, I had Bill ahead of you, I'm sorry to say. So Bill, and then Wanda, and then we'll check in again.
You got me, Elaine?
That's you, Bill.
Thank you. I wasn't sure, or myself or Mr. Reiner. Just to go back a little bit, Mark, I was in communications too. I know a lot about communications. One of the things I think is lost with Zoom communications is the lack of interpersonal communications. What do I mean by that? I personally have always liked to talk to people one-on-one right next to them. I have a difficult time seeing people's nonverbal expressions through a computer screen, their reactions, their facial expressions, a raise of the eyebrow or whatever. That's what I'm trying to say is I think in some circumstances, it's better to be in person, to talk to somebody in person, one-on-one. Obviously, I can call somebody on the phone or whatever, private message them, text them, yes. But even texting, things are lost in translation. So that's why I personally do like to, be in person. However, obviously, what everybody's saying here, I'm in agreement with too, but I just think to some extent, you got to have that interpersonal communication in person. That's all I'm trying to say with that. Thank you.
All right, Wanda, wrap it up for me, would you?
Okay. I do want to point back to our original issue here, and that is formulating some type of letter that to go up on the Hill. Although I would like for us to consider something. We do still have broadband issues in many places. And I would like to know, have we taken any kind of type of consensus to even look at the drop off in the public comment attendance in our meetings, and what we're really offering, to either use that as a piece to say, no, the participation has remained the same. I could say the participation as far as legislators are concerned has increased in certain, meetings. However, I think we need to build our case to let even the public know that people are still able to participate. And so I just don't want us to leave that out, okay? And if it doesn't matter whether or not how the city of Albany does theirs, because I find there's a very difficult process to navigate, because they don't use Zoom, they use something else, okay? So we did this because it was what was offered, so that we could remain committed to representation. But at the same time, let us just make sure that we're ensuring that we still are offering our constituency, all of our constituency, the ability to have communication with us, and also the ability to offer their opinions in a, as Bill said, in a more personal way, so that, we could see their actions and how they feel. That's it.
Thank you.
But let's not forget why we're here. We're trying to get something ready. My only question is, since Jeff brought up the March 16th date, do we have to vote on something tonight?
No, I don't think so. We're gonna have the letter and we'll run it around. It seems like the only thing it sounds to me we're in agreement on is we would like to write a letter. We would like to have some options, if we can have the responsibility for figuring out our own options. I don't think we're all the way there on what exactly we'd like to do via Zoom and what exactly we'd like to do in person, but I don't think we need to be right now. It sounds like the point that you made, Wanda, is a good one about the broadband. What I like about Zoom is that you could also use a regular telephone. So that does help some people that are not able to stay online all the time. Same thing with Facebook. Most people have a cell phone, a smartphone right now, so you can be watching stuff on your telephone if you don't have a computer. So I think that does increase access a little bit. So if that is okay with you, we'll draft the letter and send it around and agree with it via email. And Pat, is that reasonable?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I just make some quick point? We're going to submit the letter, which is great. And I think there is kind of a general consensus here. And just for whatever it's worth, I tend to agree with Mr. Reinhardt and Mr. Grimm as they summed up their views. I acknowledge that there are some benefits to in-person, but I think on balance, the net benefit of Zoom is greater than whatever the benefits of sort of in-person are in terms of interpersonal communications. I think the benefits of what we've been doing in terms of public participation are pretty significant. But we're talking about submitting this letter, which is great. What are we doing in terms of gathering intelligence to get information so we have some sense of what is going to happen, right? What do we know about anything about potential legislation that is going to impact this? I mean, it's great that we're going to submit a letter, but I mean, we're a political body. We've got a lot of political connections and we're in Albany. Do we have any sense of I mean, we should have some sense of what is actually going to happen here. Is this in committee? Is this a live issue? Is there some legislation or a bill that something's out there? I think we should know that, because I'll tell you right now, if there isn't, and if it isn't really far along, and if the governor doesn't redeclare state of emergency, and I tend to think she's not gonna for other reasons, we're back in person on March 16th. And I think everybody needs to know that. And I don't want everyone to get sort of whipsawed here. And it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Everybody should realize we're probably back in person in the next 2 weeks, because there's no legislation that's on the cusp of being made into law. So does anybody, I mean, I'm kind of asking, like, the chair or the council,
I think
any
Andrew has
intelligence
his
that
hand
you can
up.
share on this?
Andrew, do you have something to add?
No, my only, that's a great point, Jeff. And I would only say that, I think the state legislature, they're encountering the same issues that we're encountering. They're learning the same things that we're learning about remote meetings and Zoom, and how convenient it is to do things in committee and do public hearings, through Zoom and remotely. I mean, that was the indication the last go around. My question, and maybe this is for Patrick, is there any comparison now between what we're facing now versus what happened previously when the executive or emergency order expired and we had to, consider the question again of remote meetings? Is there any comparison now between then and kind of where are we? Do we have any idea?
Are you talking about the COVID numbers, or are you talking about what the status of state legislation?
A little bit of both. So so the decision to go back remote was driven by Omicron, but I'm wondering if it was when the emergency order ran out, when it expired, and we had to consider whether or not we would have that option again. Is there any comparison between that time and now? I mean, it's all a blur at this point, but it's just kind of to illuminate Jeff's question a bit more.
So there's just one thing I want to point out. The emergency declaration, our focus on the emergency declaration, or our needs from it, is very narrow. It's this single section of the open meetings law. But the powers being given to the state in terms of procurement and dealing with the dramatic shortages in staffing in the medical field and in other fields, those still exist. So I don't know that just because the numbers are down, the emergency declaration will be pulled, because that reality still exists. They're still having a tough time. The effects it have on us. I'm sorry?
Should we be asking her then to consider extending it in addition to asking her these other things? I mean, would that buy us any time? I mean, would it hurt to ask?
That choice is yours. A lot of the mandates that people became frustrated with, they've been pulled down. The school mask mandate sunsets tonight at midnight. So Governor Cuomo hit a switch and stopped everything. And I don't know, Governor Hochul has turned off the mandate for outdoors and then indoors, and now the schools. So she's taking a pretty pragmatic approach of just let's walk out of this and not just end it. So I don't know. I can't speak for her, obviously, but I think that the emergency declaration ultimately is affecting so many areas of this state, and not just this one section of the public officers law, that it could be a reality that it continues. That said, I'm not aware of any actual legislation, but I've heard that the state has been talking about it, and I will do my absolute best to find out what is ready for print at the state level.
Yes. My wife works for the state, and she a legislator, and she hasn't heard anything, anything directly in writing from anybody about it. Just talk.
My contacts in the governor's counsel's office have indicated that they are well aware of these concerns from around the state. People have been very vocal about the need for remote meetings and hybrid options and whatnot, but that my understanding is that there is no current legislation.
Wanda?
proposed at all.
I just want to say quickly, I think Jeff made a excellent point. And the one thing that we should be looking at is all of the meetings that we do have right now, meetings, hearings, or whatever, to keep people abreast of the fact that we are under a somewhat of a deadline or whatever it is, which might move you back into in person. Okay, and so that we don't have people not showing up, okay, or not knowing that, oh, I might have to be present. So that's where I understood he was going with part of my understanding of what Jeff was trying to say. Okay, that's what resonated with me. So I would suggest very strongly that we get a calendar together of all of the meetings, all of the hearings, and all of that, whatever it is, to keep people, posted that you may be going back into something that just says, like, still Zoom, okay, still Zoom, possibly whatever. But I think that is something that needs to take place, as far as I'm concerned, right now, since March 16th is fast approaching.
All right, staff, can we be on that?
Definitely.
The chair staff, the majority, the minority, everybody? Chair staff, probably, right?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman.
Chairman, we already have that. They send out notices all the time, meetings and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, just make a special note of making it Zoom till a certain date and then.
Right, because that's the issue, whether we're still going to be in, or whether we're going to remain Zoom, or we have legally have to go back to in person.
All right. Patrick, are you going to draft the letter?
Sure thing.
You drafted it last time.
I'll work with Rebecca and Brandon.
And can we have a commitment on when it might be out, like say ASA tomorrow?
Certainly a draft I can be done. I'm basically, you're asking me to expand upon what I previously did, so it shouldn't be that hard. I
Exactly.
got a lot of good input tonight, so.
Okay. So if we send it all out to you via email, you're gonna have to look at it, and as soon as I get, the committee's consent, we're gonna go with it. So the rest of you are welcome to chime in on it. But I think that speed is of the essence in this particular issue. Are you guys fried or what?
Motion to adjourn?
I got a question, Lynn. Madam,
Go ahead. All right,
Chair.
Mark.
God.
This is the rules of modernization. Where are we on modernization? Because it wasn't just some of the things we've talked about. One of the things was having a website where you could go and type in Mark Grimm's name and get his voting record and all that.
Right.
What's the status of all that stuff, which we felt was very important to what we were doing?
I know that, and I met the other day with the majority councils, and they tell me if I'm lying, Brandon, but like during Zoom, I think people just were focusing on other things. I mean, during COVID rather, focusing on all the Zoom meetings and doing that sort of technology, but we are going to make an effort to try to use Granicus more to its full capability, which is stuff like, I understand Westchester County has the link on their website, so you can see how that looks. And I can't remember, Mark, do you remember who we looked at when we were looking at Granicus? It was like another, I think it was out west.
Another
out west
municipality,
somewhere.
yeah. Another municipality, yeah. It's because that's real. You talk about open government. I want to know what Mark Grimm's voting record is. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
That was a big piece of what we were talking about when we originally drafted the legislation, and a lot of things like that have kind of been stalled out.
And part of our follow-up-
It is. We did pass this legislation a couple of years ago.
Right, because it's also, the other day I was infuriated because a constituent asked me for something and I couldn't get it for them. I couldn't pull it off of Granicus. I couldn't pull it off the website. All the formatting kept coming off, and I tried 3 computers and I was so mad, that's when so we had the meeting, and I think.
Yeah, we've already said for that, the legislators, we can't find the legislation, or the latest version of a legislation, because some of these things get amended. I don't even know what the latest version is. And if we can't find that out, how can we expect the public?
Rebecca, tell us something.
Yes, in follow-up to our meeting with Ms. Lakakis last week, part of what we're doing is following up with IT as well as the vendor, Granicus themselves. There have been some issues just bumps in the road, I guess, just in doing what we needed it to do for these past 2 years purposes. So we need more information as to whether they can do, the voting records and all of that, or whether that's a different module, how much that would be, all that sort of information. So we're following up with them for that. Beyond that, anytime anyone needs anything related to the records of the legislature, you can always reach out to the majority office and we can provide that to you as soon as we can. We have, obviously, we are the keepers of the records.
Yeah, I just want to say that was in our original contract, because we approved a contract with the legislation, and that was part of the contract. It's just, we really haven't followed through on it.
Right, and I know that a lot of it has to do with how we do business, slightly different than other legislatures do business, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way that we control information is a little bit different, but I think we are gonna move in that direction, and let's keep our feet to the fire on that, because we all really want to get our money's worth, for starters, and for secondly, we want to be able to be in the technological age here. And the other, I think we're looking at the rules, and I think we're just gonna probably have to chunk through them, and what I guess I might do is get with Jeff, and we'll pick a section to have a look at first, or something like that, and we'll just go slowly through. There was some work done before, some of which might be usable, some of which might not. So we'll have more information as it comes ahead of time of the meeting next time.
Please feel free to submit any suggestions in writing.
That's,
They'll be considered.
yes.
Just honestly, I'm not, please, if anyone has any ideas, anything about some way that they think this body can function more efficiently or more fairly or anything, please make those suggestions. And, if I say in writing, because it would just be, just specifically what it is you're talking about. And when we're going to consider those and consider some stuff that had been brought up in the past and, try and brush it off. And so please, yeah, that's what this exercise is about.
An email is fine. It doesn't have to be a fresh proposal or anything. We can work together and get some things out. Did I hear a motion to adjourn before?
You did. I'd be happy to.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks.